Whispers of Shadow presents, written and narrated by Gregory Sparrow. Platform 9, the train that doesn't exist. Prologue. If you ever find yourself standing on a railway platform that isn't marked on any map, leave immediately. Do not wait for the train. Do not listen to the announcements. And whatever happens, do not board, because in 1997, 23 people stepped onto a train that should not have existed. Hundreds watched it arrive. Hundreds watched it leave. Not one witness could later agree on what they had seen. Some described an ordinary passenger train. Others claimed it looked decades old. A few insisted it had no windows at all. The only detail every witness agreed upon was this: the train arrived at Platform 9. The problem was, there was no Platform 9. Not at that station. Not on any official railway map. Not in any maintenance records. Not in any construction plans. And yet, for 17 minutes on a cold October night, Platform 9 existed. Then it disappeared. The passengers vanished. The platform vanished. Even the security footage vanished. But one thing remained: a single audio recording. A recording captured from inside the train, the final words spoken by a passenger before the line went dead. There are no tracks ahead. Then came the screaming. My name is Daniel Mercer. What you are about to hear comes from recovered railway reports, witness statements, maintenance logs, emergency service records, and a tape discovered beneath a disused service tunnel in London in 2024. Most of these documents were never intended for public release. Some were classified. Others simply vanished. But after nearly 3 decades, enough fragments remain to reconstruct what happened. The story begins with a phone call. A phone call that lasted 14 seconds. The recording was archived by emergency services and forgotten for years. At 11:17 p.m. on October 14th, 1997, a man called the police emergency line. His voice sounded calm, not frightened, not panicked, simply confused. The operator answered, "What is your emergency?" For several seconds, only static could be heard. Then the man spoke. "I'm at Platform 9. The operator paused. According to the official station layout, there was no Platform 9. The station contained platforms 1 through 8. Nothing more. The operator assumed the caller was mistaken. "Sir, what station are you at?" The man answered immediately. He named the station correctly. A station in central London that processed tens of thousands of passengers every day. The operator checked the system. No Platform 9. No recent incidents. No reported disturbances. "Oh, sir, there isn't a Platform 9 at that location." Silence for nearly 5 seconds. Then The man whispered something that investigators would later replay thousands of times. "I know." The operator attempted to continue, but another sound interrupted the call, a distant announcement. The recording quality was poor, distorted, almost impossible to understand. Experts later enhanced the audio. The announcement appeared to say, "The train now approaching Platform 9 is ready for departure." The operator asked the caller what he could hear. The man never answered. Instead, another noise emerged. A train horn. Loud, close, much closer than it should have been. Then, the caller spoke one final sentence. A sentence that would appear repeatedly in later reports. "I don't remember seeing this platform before." The line went dead. Police arrived 4 minutes later. No Platform 9 existed. No train had arrived. No unusual activity had been reported. And the caller had disappeared. His name was Michael Hargreaves, age 32, accountant, married, no history of mental illness, no criminal record, no reason to vanish. Yet from that night onward, Michael Hargreaves ceased to exist in the ordinary sense. His bank accounts remained untouched. His passport was never used. His credit cards were never activated again. It was as if he had stepped out of reality itself. At the time, police treated the case as a missing persons investigation. Nothing more. They had no reason to suspect it would become connected to a series of disappearances stretching back decades. That connection emerged 6 months later, when a railway archivist named Peter Collins made an unexpected discovery. Collins worked in a storage facility containing historical railway documents. His job involved cataloging old maintenance reports. Most were mundane. Damaged tracks, signal failures, electrical problems, the sort of paperwork nobody ever reads. But one afternoon, while reviewing documents from the 1960s, Collins found a report marked restricted. The file referred to an incident in 1968 at the same station at exactly 11:17 p.m. A station employee reported seeing an additional platform appear between platforms 8 and the station wall. The report described something impossible. The employee claimed commuters were walking toward a platform that should not have existed. Several appeared confused. Most seemed strangely calm. Witnesses watched an unfamiliar train arrive. Passengers boarded. The train departed. And 17 minutes later, the platform disappeared. The report ended abruptly. No explanation. No conclusion. Only a handwritten note. 3 words. Do not archive. Yet somehow the document had been archived anyway. Collins initially assumed it was a prank, until he found another report. Then another. Then another. Each described nearly identical events. An unexplained platform. An unidentified train, missing passengers, and every report ended with the same duration, 17 minutes. Exactly 17 minutes. Collins notified his supervisor. The documents disappeared the following day. Officially, they never existed. But Collins had already copied them. Those copies would later become some of the most important evidence in the Platform 9 investigation. Because they revealed something even stranger, the appearances were becoming more frequent, and each occurrence seemed to leave something behind, something that did not belong, something impossible. The first object was discovered in 1949, a railway ticket. The ticket appeared authentic. The paper matched the period. The ink matched the period. Even the railway company listed on the ticket had existed. There was only one problem. The destination was impossible. The station printed on the ticket did not exist anywhere in Britain or anywhere else. Investigators searched railway archives, maps, government records. Nothing. No trace. The station simply wasn't real. The second object appeared after the 1968 incident. A newspaper, dated 3 weeks in the future. The headlines described events that had not yet occurred. Several later happened exactly as printed. Others never happened at all. The newspaper vanished before researchers could fully examine it. The third object emerged after 1979. A wristwatch. Ordinary in appearance, except for one detail. The date display advanced normally. The clock hands moved normally. But the year indicator showed 2043. Investigators believed someone had modified it as a joke, until engineers dismantled the mechanism. They discovered technology they could not identify. The watch also disappeared. By 1997, authorities quietly monitored reports connected to the phenomenon. Most officers dismissed the stories. Urban legends spread quickly through railway networks. Workers enjoyed frightening new employees with ghost stories. Platform 9 became one of those stories, a tale whispered during late-night shifts, a tale nobody truly believed, until Michael Hargreaves vanished, and then another person disappeared, and another, 23 in total, all on the same night, all connected to a train that officially never existed. And all of them were captured on security cameras. At least, they were captured before the footage vanished. The disappearance of the recordings remains one of the most disturbing aspects of the case, because, according to technicians who viewed the tapes before they were lost, the passengers weren't alone on the platform. Something else had arrived with the train. Something standing inside the last carriage, watching, waiting, and, according to one technician's written statement, it was still there after the doors closed, still standing perfectly motionless. As the train departed into darkness, the technician resigned the following day. He never explained why. And 3 years later, he disappeared as well. Part 2. The Night Platform. 9 appeared. For years, the reports remained buried, hidden inside forgotten archives, ignored by nearly everyone who encountered them. The few investigators who attempted to connect the incidents reached the same conclusion. The evidence was impossible. Therefore, it must be wrong. That explanation satisfied most people. It did not satisfy Daniel Mercer. I first encountered the Platform 9 files in 2024. At the time, I was researching unexplained disappearances connected to Britain's railway system. Most cases had mundane explanations: accidents, runaways, suicides, administrative errors. But the Hargreaves case was different. Every path eventually led back to the same date, October 14th, 1997. And every witness seemed terrified to discuss what they had seen. One witness in particular stood out, a retired station cleaner named Margaret Wells. She was 78 years old when I interviewed her. At first, she refused to speak. The moment I mentioned Platform 9, her expression changed. Not surprise, not confusion. Fear, genuine fear. The kind that never completely leaves a person, even after decades. For several minutes, she remained silent. Then she finally asked a question. Did they find the tape? I asked what tape she meant. She immediately regretted speaking. I could see it. Her hands began shaking. Her breathing became uneven. She stared toward the window, as if expecting someone to be watching. Finally, she spoke again. I saw the platform. The room became silent. Outside, rain tapped softly against the glass. Margaret stared into the distance. Not at me, not at the room, at something far away, something only she could see. It wasn't there one moment. She swallowed. Then it was. According to Margaret, the station had been unusually busy that evening. Heavy rain had delayed several trains. Passengers crowded the platforms. Announcements echoed through the building. Nothing seemed unusual. Until 11:17 p.m., Margaret was collecting rubbish near Platform 8 when she noticed people turning their heads, one after another, almost simultaneously, as though responding to a sound she couldn't hear. She followed their gaze and saw something impossible. A platform where no platform should have been. It appeared between Platform 8 and a concrete wall, not emerging, not forming, simply existing, as though it had always been there. The platform lights glowed softly. An electronic display hung overhead. The sign read, Platform 9. Margaret remembered blinking repeatedly, certain she was imagining it. The platform remained. People began walking toward it, not running, not acting frightened, simply behaving as if Platform 9 had always existed. as if they had used it their entire lives. That detail disturbed her more than anything else. Nobody questioned it. Nobody shouted. Nobody demanded answers. The impossible had appeared directly in front of hundreds of people, and almost everyone accepted it immediately. Then came the announcement. Margaret remembered every word, even 27 years later. The train, now approaching platform 9, is ready for departure. The voice sounded normal, professional, calm. Yet something felt wrong, almost as if the words were being spoken by someone unfamiliar with human speech. The rhythm felt unnatural, the pauses slightly incorrect, like an imitation. Margaret described it as hearing someone pretend to be human. The train arrived less than a minute later. No witness could agree on where it came from. Some claimed it emerged from darkness. Others insisted it appeared instantly. One man later stated that it seemed to arrive from inside the tunnel wall itself. But every witness agreed on one thing. The train made almost no sound, no screeching brakes, no rattling wheels, no vibration. It simply glided forward, silent, watching, waiting. The doors opened. 23 people boarded, not all at once, one by one. Several appeared uncertain. A few looked confused. One woman reportedly stopped just outside the door. She stared into the carriage for nearly 10 seconds. Witnesses later said she seemed frightened, as if she had finally noticed something wrong. Then she stepped inside anyway and disappeared. Margaret never boarded, not because she understood the danger, because something else caught her attention. The last carriage. At first, she thought someone was standing inside. A passenger, a conductor perhaps. Then she realized the figure had not moved, not once, not even slightly. The train doors opened. Passengers entered. Time passed. The figure remained motionless. Margaret tried to focus on its face. She couldn't. Every time she looked directly at it, her eyes seemed to slide away, as if her mind refused to process what she was seeing. The figure was tall, far taller than an ordinary person. Its head nearly touched the ceiling, and although she could clearly see its outline, she could not remember a single facial feature afterward. Only the feeling, the overwhelming certainty that it was looking directly at her, watching her, waiting for her decision, board or leave. For reasons she still couldn't explain, Margaret stepped backward. Then another step, and another. The moment she left the edge of the platform, the sensation vanished. The figure no longer seemed interested. It simply continued standing inside the final carriage, perfectly still. Then the doors closed. The train departed. The platform remained for 17 minutes. Exactly 17. Then everything vanished. The train, the lights, the signs, the platform itself. Gone, leaving only the original concrete wall, as if nothing had happened. But something had happened. 23 people never came home. Families reported them missing the following morning. Police launched investigations. Media coverage exploded. Authorities searched rivers, forests, roadways, airports. Nothing, not a single trace emerged. Then the witness reports began arriving. Most were dismissed immediately. People claimed impossible things. A train that wasn't listed. A platform that didn't exist. Passengers vanishing into thin air. Investigators assumed mass confusion, perhaps panic, perhaps false memories, until they reviewed the security recordings and discovered something even more disturbing. The cameras had captured the platform, captured the passengers, captured the train. But there was a problem. Every recording ended the same way. At exactly 11:34 p.m., 17 minutes after Platform 9 appeared, the footage distorted. Static filled the screen. The image twisted. And for a single frame, something appeared. Something standing behind the cameras, watching the station, watching everyone. Technicians described the figure differently. Some claimed it resembled a human silhouette. Others insisted it was far too large. One technician wrote that it appeared to have no face at all, only darkness, yet every description contained one identical detail. The figure seemed aware of being observed, as though it knew people were reviewing the footage, as though it knew people were searching for answers. 3 days later, the recordings disappeared from evidence storage. No sign of forced entry, no digital records, nothing. They simply ceased to exist. Exactly like the passengers, exactly like the platform, exactly like the train. Officially, the footage was lost due to a storage error. Unofficially, nobody believed that explanation, especially not after what happened next, because 6 months later, a package arrived at British Transport Police headquarters. No return address, no fingerprints, no identifying marks. Inside was a cassette tape and a note. Only 6 words written in black ink. He found a way back. The tape was labeled with a single name. Michael Hargreaves, the man who had vanished from Platform 9, the man who should have been dead, the man who had disappeared 6 months earlier. Investigators assumed it was a hoax until they played the recording and heard his voice. The tape began with heavy static, then breathing, slow, uneven, exhausted. Several seconds passed. Then Michael spoke. The date of that recording would become one of the greatest mysteries in British railway history, because according to forensic analysis, the tape had been recorded after he disappeared. And what Michael described next would change the entire investigation forever. He claimed he was still on the train, and according to him, the journey had only just begun. Part 3, the recording from inside the train. The tape began with static, not ordinary tape hiss, not electrical interference, something deeper, a low droning sound buried beneath the recording. Audio engineers would later compare it to distant machinery. Others claimed it sounded like hundreds of voices speaking simultaneously. Nobody could agree. What mattered was the voice, because it belonged to Michael Hargreaves. Every expert confirmed it. The voice patterns matched, the breathing matched, the speech habits matched. It was him, the man who had vanished 6 months earlier. The tape clicked. Several seconds of silence followed. Then Michael began speaking. His voice sounded tired, weak, as though he had not slept for days, or perhaps much longer. "My name is Michael Hargreaves." More static. "If anyone finds this..." He paused. A long pause, almost as if he had forgotten what he intended to say. "Don't board the train." Investigators later noted that Michael seemed disoriented. His speech drifted. His thoughts wandered. Yet one thing remained consistent. Fear, not panic, not hysteria. Fear, the kind that develops slowly, the kind that grows over time. The fear of someone who has learned something terrible, something they wish they never understood. "I thought it was another platform." His breathing became audible. Everyone did. A metallic sound echoed in the background, a distant clang, like something striking steel, far away. The doors opened. Another pause. People were getting on. Silence. So I got on too. For several moments, only the strange droning sound could be heard. Then Michael continued. "The train looked normal at first." That phrase appeared repeatedly throughout the recording. At first. According to Michael, the interior resembled an ordinary British passenger carriage. Rows of seats, overhead lights, advertisements, windows. Nothing unusual. Several passengers even joked about the confusion surrounding the mysterious platform. One man reportedly laughed. Another complained about being late. A woman was reading a newspaper. Everything appeared normal until the train departed. Michael described looking through the window, expecting to see the station disappear behind them. Instead, he saw darkness, not night, not a tunnel. Darkness, absolute darkness. No lights, No reflections, no movement, nothing. The passengers noticed it almost immediately. Conversation stopped. People began looking outside, trying to understand what they were seeing, or rather, what they weren't seeing, because there was nothing there. No tunnel walls, no tracks, no signals, nothing. Just endless blackness. Michael said that was when the first person became frightened. An elderly man seated near the front carriage. The man approached a conductor. At least, everyone assumed he was a conductor. The figure wore a railway uniform, or something resembling one. Yet, nobody remembered seeing him board. Nobody remembered him entering the carriage. One moment, he wasn't there. The next, he was, standing beside the doors, watching. The elderly passenger asked where the train was heading. The conductor smiled. Michael spent nearly 2 minutes describing that smile, not because it was unusual, because it wasn't. It looked completely normal, perfectly normal. And according to Michael, that was the problem. It looked practiced. Silence. Like somebody learned how to smile by watching people. The old man repeated his question. The conductor answered immediately. Next stop. Nothing more. The old man asked again. Next stop where? The conductor continued smiling. Next stop. Several passengers laughed nervously. Others exchanged concerned looks. The conversation ended, but the atmosphere changed. Something felt wrong. The feeling spread through the carriage. Passenger after passenger began noticing inconsistencies, small things, details easy to dismiss individually, yet impossible to ignore collectively. The advertisements above the seats contained words that looked English, but weren't. The letters shifted when people tried to read them. Dates printed on safety notices made no sense. Emergency instructions referred to locations that didn't exist. One passenger discovered a route map. The stations listed on it were unknown, not closed stations, not forgotten stations, completely unknown, names that appeared nowhere in British railway records. Michael remembered one in particular, BLACKMERE. The station appeared repeatedly throughout the map. Every line eventually led there. No matter where the journey began, every route ended at BLACKMERE. That was when passengers attempted to leave. The doors wouldn't open. Emergency release mechanisms failed. Windows refused to break. Mobile phones lost signal. One passenger tried contacting emergency services. The call connected, but something strange happened. Michael described hearing a voice answer, a familiar voice, his own. The call disconnected immediately. Others reported similar experiences. A woman heard herself speaking. A teenage boy heard his father. Another passenger heard a voice belonging to someone who had died years earlier. Panic spread. People demanded answers. The conductor remained motionless, watching. smiling, waiting. Then the lights flickered. Only once. But that single flicker changed everything, because for less than a second, passengers saw the carriage clearly, not the version they thought they were riding in, the real version. Michael struggled to describe it. His voice shook whenever he tried. The seats. Silence. The seats weren't seats anymore. Several seconds passed. His breathing became uneven. They were occupied. Another pause. Longer this time. We thought we were alone. According to Michael, the carriage was full. Every row, every seat, occupied by silent figures. Dozens of them, perhaps hundreds. Passengers who hadn't been visible moments earlier. None moved. None spoke. They simply sat facing forward, watching the darkness beyond the windows, waiting for something. Michael claimed the lights returned almost immediately. The figures vanished, but the damage was done. Everyone had seen them. Everyone knew they were there, and everyone understood the same terrifying truth. The train wasn't empty. It never had been. The tape paused for nearly 20 seconds. Investigators initially believed the recording had ended. Then Michael spoke again, more quietly this time, almost whispering. They weren't passengers. A metallic scraping noise echoed somewhere behind him. Slow, heavy, moving closer. Michael lowered his voice further. I think they're waiting for their stop. The sound continued. Scrape, 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 as though something enormous was moving through another carriage. Approaching, getting closer. Then the recording captured something that experts still cannot explain. A station announcement. Clear, undistorted, perfectly audible. A woman's voice. Professional, calm, exactly like a normal railway announcement. Now arriving at BLACKMERE. Michael immediately began breathing faster. The scraping stopped. Complete silence followed. Then he whispered, "Oh God." The tape ended abruptly. But that was not the entire recording, because investigators later discovered a second section hidden beneath layers of damaged audio, a section that had never been intended to be heard, a section recorded hours later, or perhaps years later. Nobody knows. What they do know is this: the second recording began with screaming, and Michael was no longer alone. Part 4. BLACKMERE Station. The second section of the tape should not have existed. According to experts who analyzed it, the recording contained anomalies that made no sense. The first portion had been recorded on standard magnetic tape. Nothing unusual. The second portion was different. The magnetic signature didn't match. The background frequencies didn't match. Even the degradation pattern suggested the audio had been recorded years apart. Yet both sections existed on the same cassette. No signs of editing, no evidence of tampering, no explanation. When investigators finally restored the damaged audio, the recording began with screaming. Not one voice. Many, dozens, perhaps more. The sound quality was terrible, distorted beyond recognition. But the terror was unmistakable. Somebody was running. Heavy footsteps echoed through what sounded like a large enclosed space. Metallic impacts rang out in the distance. A woman cried out, then silence. For nearly 30 seconds, only Michael's breathing could be heard. Fast, panicked, exhausted. Finally he spoke. "I don't know how long it's been." His voice sounded different. Older, not dramatically older, but older, as though years had passed. "The clocks don't work here." A pause. "Nothing works here." The recording shifted. A faint wind could now be heard. Not natural wind. Something deeper, like air moving through an enormous underground structure. Michael continued. The train stopped. Silence. Most people got off. Another pause. They thought they were going home. His breathing trembled. They were wrong. The next several minutes became the foundation of everything now known about BLACKMERE, a place that officially does not exist, a place never mentioned in public records, a place that appears only in documents connected to Platform 9. According to Michael, BLACKMERE station was enormous, far larger than any railway terminal he had ever seen. The ceiling disappeared into darkness. Columns stretched upward beyond visibility. Rows of platforms extended endlessly in both directions. Thousands of lights glowed overhead. Yet, somehow, the station remained dim, as if darkness absorbed most of the illumination. The architecture looked familiar, British, Victorian, industrial. Yet every detail felt slightly incorrect. Doors were too tall, windows too narrow. Signs seemed normal until examined closely. Then their letters changed, words shifted, meanings dissolved. Passengers who stepped off the train initially believed they had arrived at a real station. Some even laughed in relief. That confidence lasted less than 5 minutes, because nobody could find an exit. Every corridor led somewhere else. Every staircase descended. Every map contradicted itself. The station appeared to rearrange itself continuously. Paths changed, rooms moved, entire platforms vanished. One man marked a wall with a pen. When he returned an hour later, the wall no longer existed. Michael encountered dozens of passengers from earlier trains. Some claimed they had arrived days earlier. Others believed months had passed. A few insisted they had been trapped for decades. Nobody agreed on time. Nobody agreed on distance. Nobody agreed on anything. Except one thing. Everyone feared the conductors. The conductors appeared throughout the station, standing near tunnels, watching platforms, observing crowds, always smiling, always silent. Michael eventually learned something important. The conductors were not the worst thing inside BLACKMERE. Not even close. That realization came from a woman named Eleanor Finch. Or at least that was the name she remembered. Michael met her near an abandoned ticket office. Unlike most passengers, Eleanor had been trapped there for a long time. How long? Nobody knew. Not even Eleanor. Time behaved differently inside BLACKMERE. Days could feel like hours. Hours could feel like years. People lost track, memories blurred, names faded. Yet Eleanor remembered enough to terrify Michael. According to her, BLACKMERE wasn't a destination. It was a junction, a transfer point, a place between places. Passengers arrived continuously. New trains appeared every so often, some from Platform 9, others from locations nobody recognized. The station absorbed them all. Then, eventually, the passengers disappeared. At first, Michael assumed they escaped. Eleanor shook her head. No one escaped. Not anymore. She pointed toward the far end of the station, beyond rows of empty platforms, beyond the lights, beyond the visible tracks. Something existed there. Something nobody approached. Something nobody discussed openly. Passengers who wandered too close never returned. The conductors never stopped them. The conductors simply watched, as if they already knew the outcome. Michael asked what existed beyond the station. Eleanor answered with 3 words: the last platform. Then she refused to explain further. That night, if it could still be called night, Michael witnessed his first disappearance. A young man, perhaps 20 years old, frightened, exhausted, desperate. The man had spent weeks searching for an exit. Weeks. At least according to him. He suddenly began running, sprinting across one of the distant platforms, shouting that he had found a tunnel, an escape route. People watched. Nobody followed. The man reached the tunnel entrance. He turned, smiled, raised his hand, and vanished. Not into darkness, not around a corner. Vanished. Gone instantly, as though reality itself had erased him. Michael expected panic. Instead, the crowd remained silent. Nobody seemed surprised. Nobody reacted. Eventually, Eleanor explained why. The station did that sometimes. People disappeared. Sometimes they returned. Most didn't. Those who returned were never the same. Michael laughed when he first heard that. A nervous laugh, an attempt to deny the growing horror around him. Then he met one of the returnees. The encounter haunted him for the rest of his life. The man approached without warning, middle-aged, thin, pale. His clothes looked decades old. His face seemed familiar. Yet Michael couldn't place it. The stranger stared at him for several seconds, then spoke. "You're from 1997. Michael nodded. The man smiled sadly. "I remember 1997. A cold sensation crawled through Michael. The stranger appeared older than 50, perhaps 60. Yet something about his voice felt wrong. The accent, the phrasing, the references he used, everything suggested a man from another era. Michael asked when he had arrived. The stranger considered the question carefully, then answered, 1949. Michael laughed. He thought it was a joke. The stranger did not. "I boarded from platform 9. Silence. I was 17. The man looked toward the darkness beyond the station. His expression changed. Fear. Pure fear. Even after all those years. "Don't go near the last platform." Michael asked why. The stranger's eyes widened. For the first time, genuine panic appeared on his face. He grabbed Michael's arm. Hard, painfully hard. Then whispered, "Because that's where the trains come from." The recording stopped for several seconds. When it resumed, Michael sounded different, more frightened than ever before, more desperate, as if recalling the memory itself terrified him. His next words were barely audible. "I saw one arrive." Static filled the tape. A low rumbling emerged beneath the noise. Distant, massive, like thunder echoing through an underground world. Then Michael whispered something investigators would never forget. "There wasn't a driver." Silence. There never was. And somewhere in the darkness beyond BLACKMERE station, something was approaching. Part 5. The Last Platform. The first time Michael saw the last platform, he almost didn't realize what he was looking at. BLACKMERE was vast, beyond comprehension. Entire railway stations could have fit inside it, perhaps several. The farther one traveled from the central platforms, the stranger the station became. The lights grew weaker, the architecture older, the crowds thinner. Passengers avoided those areas. Nobody explained why. They simply stayed away. Michael eventually understood. The station was divided into invisible boundaries. Everyone knew where they were. No signs marked them. No barriers existed. Yet people instinctively avoided crossing certain lines. The last platform lay beyond one of those boundaries, beyond the place where most passengers stopped, beyond the place where even the conductors rarely ventured. It existed at the edge of BLACKMERE, or what passed for an edge. Michael first saw it from a distance, a single platform, longer than any railway platform should have been. It stretched into darkness until it vanished from sight. No lights illuminated it, no signs identified it, no passengers waited there. Yet something stood beside it. A train. If it could still be called a train. Michael struggled to describe what he saw. The words on the tape became fragmented, uncertain, as though language itself was insufficient. It looked wrong. Silence. Not damaged. Another pause. Wrong. The carriages appeared impossibly long. Their proportions shifted whenever he looked directly at them. Windows seemed present one moment, gone the next. The metal surface reflected light that didn't exist. Shadows moved across its exterior despite the absence of motion. Worst of all, the train appeared alive, not biologically, not in any ordinary sense. Yet Michael could not escape the feeling. It watched. It listened. It waited. And according to Eleanor, it arrived regularly. Nobody knew from where. Nobody knew why. Only that each arrival changed BLACKMERE. Passengers disappeared afterward. Entire sections of the station transformed. New tunnels appeared. Old corridors vanished. Reality seemed to bend around its presence. Michael asked Eleanor who operated the train. Her answer chilled him. Nothing operates it. The train did not need a driver. It never had, because, according to those trapped in BLACKMERE, the train chose its own passengers. At first, Michael dismissed the idea. Stress, fear, isolation. People invented myths to survive impossible situations. Then he witnessed a selection. The memory clearly terrified him. His breathing became uneven every time he described it. According to Michael, dozens of passengers stood near the central platforms, talking quietly, waiting, surviving. Then a station announcement echoed through BLACKMERE. Unlike previous announcements, this one contained no destination, no platform number, no instructions, only a name, a single name, spoken calmly, clearly, a woman's name. The crowd immediately fell silent. Everyone turned. A young woman standing nearby began trembling. She looked around desperately, as though hoping someone else shared her name. Nobody did. The announcement repeated. Again and again. Each repetition sounded slightly closer. The woman began crying. Passengers backed away from her, not out of cruelty, out of fear. Nobody wanted to be near her. Nobody wanted to be associated with her. Michael asked what was happening. Eleanor answered quietly. "It's her turn." The woman ran. The crowd parted immediately. No one attempted to help. No one attempted to stop her. She disappeared into the station. Moments later, distant screaming echoed through BLACKMERE. Then silence. The announcement never repeated. The woman was never seen again. Michael later learned that the names always came eventually, sooner or later. Everyone heard theirs, some after days, some after years. Nobody knew what happened afterward. Only that those called never truly returned. That realization changed everything, because for the first time, Michael understood something horrifying. BLACKMERE wasn't a place people accidentally entered. It was a place people were being collected. The station wasn't random. The trains weren't random. The disappearances weren't random. There was a purpose, some kind of process, something operating behind the scenes, something vast, something patient, something ancient. The tape then captured one of the strangest details ever recorded. Michael claimed he found a timetable, a genuine railway timetable, printed on old paper, mounted behind cracked glass. The schedule listed hundreds of arrivals, hundreds of departures. Most destinations were unfamiliar, impossible names, impossible places. But a few stood out because they weren't places at all. One destination simply read, "Before," another, "After," another, "The shore." One entry contained no letters whatsoever, only a black rectangle. Michael described staring at it for several minutes. The longer he looked, the more uncomfortable he became. Eventually he walked away. Years later, he still couldn't explain why. Something about the destination felt dangerous, as though reading it too long would reveal something the human mind wasn't meant to understand. The deeper Michael explored, the more evidence he found that BLACKMERE connected to far more than Platform 9. Passengers came from different countries, different centuries. Some spoke languages he couldn't identify. Others described trains that had vanished decades earlier. One elderly man claimed he boarded in 1888. A woman insisted she came from 2034. Most assumed she was insane. Then she described technology that did not yet exist. Technology investigators would later recognize. Michael began documenting everything, every conversation, every observation, every anomaly. He recorded whenever possible, hiding tapes throughout the station, leaving messages for anyone who might someday find them. He became obsessed with understanding BLACKMERE, obsessed with finding a way home. Then, one day, he discovered something impossible. Someone else from Platform 9. Someone who should not have been alive. Michael encountered the man near an abandoned maintenance tunnel. The stranger looked exhausted, frightened, desperate. Yet the moment he saw Michael, relief flooded his face. The man knew him, recognized him, called him by name. Michael had never seen him before. The stranger explained why. His name was Thomas Reed, one of the 23 passengers who boarded in 1997. The problem was, Thomas looked 20 years older. Michael did not. According to Thomas, he had spent decades inside BLACKMERE. Decades. Michael had experienced only months, maybe less. Time was inconsistent, unstable. Passengers aged differently. Some hardly changed. Others grew old. A few appeared to age backward. The station distorted everything. Memory, distance, time itself. Thomas revealed another secret, one he had spent years uncovering. BLACKMERE was not the destination. It was the waiting room. The true destination lay beyond the last platform, beyond the trains, beyond the darkness. And according to Thomas, something was preparing to arrive, something that had arrived many times before, something responsible for every disappearance connected to Platform 9. Michael asked the obvious question, what is it? Thomas stared toward the distant darkness. For several seconds, he said nothing. Then he answered. 4 words. 4 words that would later appear in multiple recovered documents. It's not a train. The tape fell silent. Only the distant rumbling remained, a deep vibration echoing through BLACKMERE station, growing louder, growing closer. Something enormous was moving in the darkness beyond the last platform. And for the first time, the conductors appeared afraid. Part 6. What arrives at BLACKMERE? The conductors had always seemed detached, unconcerned, almost indifferent. Passengers disappeared. The station changed. Entire sections of BLACKMERE shifted overnight. The conductors never reacted, never spoke, never showed fear. That changed when the rumbling began. Michael noticed it immediately. So did everyone else. The vibration spread through the station floor, not violently, not like an earthquake, more like a heartbeat, slow, massive, ancient. Every few seconds the floor trembled, then again, then again. The rhythm continued for hours, or perhaps days. Time inside BLACKMERE remained impossible to measure. Passengers gathered near the central concourse, watching, waiting. Nobody spoke. Everyone seemed to understand what the vibrations meant. Everyone except Michael. Eventually he found Eleanor. For the first time since meeting her, she looked genuinely terrified, not anxious, not concerned, terrified. She grabbed his arm before he could ask a question. It's early. Michael frowned. What's early? Eleanor swallowed, her eyes fixed on something far beyond the station. The arrival. The word hung in the air. Arrival. Not a train, not a passenger. An arrival. something else, something important enough that even the conductors feared it. Michael demanded answers. Eleanor hesitated, then finally spoke. The station wasn't built for us. Silence. We're only passing through. Michael felt a chill crawl down his spine. He had suspected as much. BLACKMERE was too large, too old, too complicated. It clearly served a purpose beyond collecting lost passengers. The station existed for something else, something larger. Eleanor continued, "The trains bring people." She pointed toward the darkness beyond the last platform. But they aren't bringing people for themselves. Michael understood immediately. The realization hit him like a physical blow. Passengers weren't the destination. They were cargo. Something else was waiting, something beyond the station, something that occasionally came to collect. The rumbling grew louder. The floor shook again. This time, several lights flickered overhead. Far away, somewhere near the last platform, a siren began sounding. A deep, mechanical tone. Unlike any alarm Michael had ever heard, passengers immediately started moving, not toward the sound, away from it. Some ran. Others simply walked quickly. Nobody moved towards the last platform. Nobody. Michael watched dozens of people abandon entire sections of the station. The reaction reminded him of animals fleeing a forest fire. Instinctive, desperate, absolute. Then the announcements began. For the first time since arriving at BLACKMERE, the station's voice sounded different. Not calm, not professional. Urgent, distorted, as though something interfered with the system itself. The announcement, repeated endlessly, "Remain clear of the last platform." Again. "Remain clear of the last platform." Again. "Remain clear of the last platform." Then the voice abruptly changed. For less than a second, a different voice emerged beneath it. Deep, ancient, impossible. Michael nearly dropped the recorder, because the hidden voice wasn't issuing instructions. It was laughing. The station announcement returned immediately. Normal again. But Michael knew what he had heard, and judging by the expressions around him, so did everyone else. The rumbling continued. Closer now. Much closer. Then something happened that nobody expected. The conductors started running. Not walking, not calmly relocating. Running. Michael had never seen them move quickly before. Passengers stopped and stared. The conductors rushed toward tunnels, service corridors, maintenance shafts, disappearing into areas normally inaccessible. They were hiding. The realization terrified everyone, because if the conductors were afraid, whatever was coming had to be far worse. Then the lights failed. Entire sections of BLACKMERE plunged into darkness. Screams erupted. People began running. Michael lost sight of Eleanor, lost sight of Thomas, lost sight of everyone. The station dissolved into chaos. Emergency lighting activated moments later. The dim red glow transformed BLACKMERE into something nightmarish. Shadows stretched unnaturally. Platforms seemed longer. Corridors deeper. The station no longer resembled a railway terminal. It looked like something else, something alive. Then Michael heard the horn. A train horn. At least that's what he first believed. The sound echoed through the darkness. Deep, powerful, wrong. No railway horn could produce such a tone. The vibration penetrated his chest, his bones, his thoughts. Passengers collapsed to their knees. Some covered their ears. Others began crying. One man started screaming uncontrollably. The sound lasted nearly 30 seconds. When it finally ended, the station became silent, completely silent. No footsteps, no voices, no announcements, nothing. Then Michael looked toward the darkness beyond the last platform and saw movement. At first he thought it was a train. The shape was enormous, long, dark, moving slowly through the shadows. Then it came closer. And Michael realized the truth. It wasn't a train. It only resembled one from a distance. The thing approaching BLACKMERE was vastly larger. The front section emerged first, a structure resembling an engine, except it lacked wheels, lacked tracks, lacked anything that should have allowed movement. It simply floated, gliding through darkness. Behind it stretched an impossible chain of carriages, hundreds of them, perhaps thousands. Michael couldn't determine where the structure ended because the rear disappeared into darkness beyond visibility. The thing was too large to comprehend. Passengers stared in horror. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then the lights from BLACKMERE reflected across its surface, and Michael saw faces, thousands of faces, embedded throughout the structure, pressed into the metal, frozen, silent, human faces. Some appeared ancient, others modern. Some looked terrified. Others looked peaceful. Every face seemed real, not decorations, not carvings, real, as though people had become part of the structure itself. The sight shattered several witnesses. One woman fainted instantly. A man nearby began sobbing. Michael could barely breathe. The thing continued approaching, slowly, patiently, like a predator that knew escape was impossible. Then it stopped beside the last platform. The station shook violently. Dust fell from the ceiling. Lights flickered. And every face embedded within the structure opened its eyes. The tape captured Michael's reaction. a sharp intake of breath, then complete silence, because no words could adequately describe what he was seeing. Thousands of eyes watching simultaneously, every single one focused on BLACKMERE's station, focused on the passengers, focused on him. Then the doors began opening, not carriage doors, mouths. Hundreds of mouths opening across the surface of the structure. Dark openings leading somewhere inside, somewhere impossibly deep. And from within those openings came a sound investigators would later spend years analyzing. A sound hidden beneath static, beneath distortion, beneath damaged tape, yet still recognizable. Voices, thousands of voices, all speaking the same sentence, over and over, in perfect unison. Next stop. The recording cut abruptly, but Michael survived, at least for a while, because what happened next would reveal the true purpose of BLACKMERE and why Platform 9 continues to appear, even now, even today, for somewhere beyond the last platform. Something is still collecting passengers. Part 7. The Collector. For years, investigators referred to it as the train. The name appeared in reports, audio analyses, internal memos, witness statements. It was convenient, simple, understandable. But according to Michael's final recordings, the description was wrong. The thing beyond the last platform was not a train. It only used the shape of one, like a disguise, a mask, something familiar enough that the human mind could process it. Michael eventually gave it another name, a name found repeatedly throughout his recovered notes: the Collector. The recording resumed several hours after the arrival, or perhaps several days. Inside BLACKMERE, time no longer had meaning. Michael sounded exhausted. His voice was weaker, older, more distant. It's feeding. The words were barely audible. That's what the station is for. A long silence followed. Then he explained. Passengers had always assumed BLACKMERE was a prison, a trap, a place where people became lost. The truth was far worse. BLACKMERE was a sorting station, a waiting room, a place where people accumulated until the Collector arrived. Then selections were made. The chosen disappeared. The rest waited for the next arrival. Nobody knew the criteria. Nobody understood the process. Only that it happened. Again and again. For generations. Michael described what he witnessed after the arrival. The massive structure remained motionless beside the last platform. The embedded faces continued watching. The mouths remained open. And throughout BLACKMERE, the announcements began. Names, one after another. passengers froze whenever they heard their own. Some ran, some cried, some simply accepted it. Every outcome ended the same way. The chosen vanished. Michael watched dozens disappear, then hundreds. Entire crowds dwindled. BLACKMERE became quieter, emptier, as though something was harvesting it. And throughout the process, the collector never moved. It didn't need to. The station itself performed the work. Doors opened where no doors existed. Corridors shifted. Walls changed. Eventually, every chosen passenger found themselves walking toward the last platform, whether they intended to or not. Michael became obsessed with understanding why. Why these people? Why now? Why Platform 9? The answer came from Thomas, the man who claimed to have arrived in 1949. By then, Thomas was deteriorating. His memory faded daily. His appearance changed. Sometimes older, sometimes younger. The station was affecting him, consuming him. Yet he remembered one important detail, a discovery he had spent decades uncovering. According to Thomas, every known appearance of Platform 9 shared a common factor. Every passenger who boarded carried something unusual, not physically, psychologically, emotionally, a burden, a regret, a loss, an obsession, something unresolved. Michael initially dismissed the theory. Then he began interviewing survivors, or rather, those still trapped inside BLACKMERE. The pattern emerged quickly. One woman had spent years searching for her missing daughter. A man carried overwhelming guilt after a fatal accident. Another passenger had become obsessed with finding proof of life after death. Again and again, the same theme appeared: loss, longing, regret. The collector wasn't choosing randomly. It was choosing people who were searching for something they could never fully let go. That realization terrified Michael, because he understood why he had boarded, why he had approached Platform 9 without questioning it. For years, he had carried a private grief, one he rarely discussed. His younger brother had disappeared when they were children. No body, no answers, no closure, just absence. A wound that never healed. The moment he recognized the pattern, everything changed. Platform 9 had not appeared by accident. It had appeared for him, just as it had appeared for the others. The realization shattered whatever hope he still possessed, because it meant the disappearances were deliberate, designed, engineered. The collector wasn't gathering people. It was gathering need, gathering grief, gathering unfinished stories, and somehow feeding upon them. Then Michael made a discovery that changed everything, a discovery hidden deep beneath BLACKMERE, far below the platforms. far below the tunnels, far below anything resembling a railway station, he found an archive, an impossible archive. Miles of shelves stretching into darkness, millions of objects, photographs, tickets, letters, watches, jewelry, personal belongings. Every item labeled, every item cataloged, every item connected to someone who had vanished. The collection stretched farther than Michael could see, and among the artifacts, he found something familiar. A photograph, old, faded, damaged by time. The image showed a group of school children standing outside a railway station. Michael immediately recognized one of them, his brother, the brother who had disappeared decades earlier. The photograph had been taken years after the disappearance. Impossible, yet undeniably real. Michael described staring at it for hours. Unable to process what he was seeing, his brother appeared older, alive, standing beside a sign containing a single word, BLACKMERE. The photograph changed everything. For the first time since arriving, Michael believed there might be an answer, maybe even a way home. If his brother had survived, others might have survived too. That hope drove him deeper into the station than anyone had ever gone, deeper than Thomas, deeper than Eleanor, deeper than the conductors themselves, toward the source of BLACKMERE, toward the place from which the collector came. And according to the final surviving tapes, he found it. Unfortunately, he also discovered why nobody was meant to find it. The next recording began with running, heavy footsteps, labored breathing, and a sentence investigators would never forget. The station isn't underground. Silence. Then, it never was. The truth about BLACKMERE was finally waiting, and it was far worse than anyone imagined. Part 8. The Truth Beneath BLACKMERE. The final recovered tape was discovered in 2024, hidden behind a sealed maintenance panel beneath an abandoned service tunnel. The cassette was heavily damaged. Large sections were corrupted beyond recovery. What remained lasted just under 20 minutes. Investigators would later describe it as the most disturbing piece of evidence ever connected to Platform 9. Not because of what it contained, because of what it implied. The recording began with Michael running, fast, desperately. The sound of his footsteps echoed through a vast, empty space. Not tunnels, not corridors. Something larger, much larger. For nearly a minute he said nothing. Only his breathing filled the tape. Then he finally spoke. His voice trembled. The station isn't underground. A pause. It never was. Silence. We thought BLACKMERE was beneath London. His breathing became uneven. It isn't beneath anything. Several seconds passed. Michael seemed to struggle for words. as if describing what he had discovered required concepts he didn't possess. Eventually he continued, "The station exists inside the tracks." The sentence made no sense. Not at first. Then Michael explained, or tried to. According to him, reality itself contained pathways, invisible routes, connections between moments, places, memories, possibilities. Most people never perceived them, but trains did. Railways connected locations, journeys, destinations, and somehow, something ancient had learned to use those connections, not physical tracks, conceptual ones. The collector moved through pathways linking human lives together. Regrets, memories, loss, hope. Every unresolved story created another route, another connection, another track, and BLACKMERE existed at the intersection of all of them. The station wasn't beneath London. It wasn't beneath Earth. It wasn't anywhere. It was between, a junction, a crossing point, a place built where countless human journeys overlapped. Michael admitted he barely understood it himself. Neither did the people trapped there. But he had seen enough to grasp the larger truth. The collector wasn't invading reality. It was part of it. Older than railways. Older than cities. Older perhaps than humanity itself. Railways merely gave it a shape, a structure people could recognize. Before trains, it likely appeared differently. Before stations, differently still. The form changed, the purpose remained. Collect, observe, continue. Michael then described what he found beyond the archive, beyond the deepest tunnels, beyond even the last platform. A place no passenger had ever documented. The source, the heart of BLACKMERE. The recording became increasingly unstable during this section. Static surged repeatedly. Entire sentences vanished. Yet enough survived, enough to understand. Michael entered a chamber, an enormous open space extending beyond visibility. The darkness there was different, not empty, occupied, alive. Something moved within it, something vast beyond imagination. For several minutes, Michael simply described scale, size, distance, mass. Again and again, he struggled to communicate what he was seeing. Eventually, he abandoned precise descriptions, because none existed. Instead, he spoke a sentence investigators would later quote endlessly. The collector is only a part of it. Silence. Then, a very small part. The realization broke him. Everything passengers feared, everything authorities investigated, every disappearance, every train, every platform, all of it represented only a fragment of something much larger, something impossible. Michael believed BLACKMERE functioned like a fishing line, a mechanism extending into reality. The collector gathered passengers, gathered stories, gathered memories, and delivered them somewhere else, to something waiting beyond perception, waiting beyond understanding, waiting beyond BLACKMERE itself. Then Michael said something unexpected, something hopeful. For the first time in the entire recording, he had found survivors, not passengers, not victims, survivors, people who had escaped the collector, people who had reached the deepest parts of BLACKMERE and remained hidden. Among them, his brother. For several moments, Michael could barely speak. Emotion overwhelmed him. Years of grief, years of searching, years of uncertainty, all ending in that single discovery. His brother was alive, older, changed, but alive. The reunion occupied several missing sections of the tape. Most were too damaged to recover. Fragments survived, enough to reveal one critical detail. Michael's brother knew a way out. Not a safe way, not a reliable way, but a way. The escape route involved Platform 9 itself. The platform wasn't merely an entrance, it was also an exit. Under extremely rare circumstances, the difficulty was timing. The platform appeared for exactly 17 minutes. Missed the window, and the opportunity vanished. Perhaps for years, perhaps forever. Michael and the survivors began preparing, gathering information, tracking arrivals, watching the station, waiting for the next opening, the next chance. According to the remaining audio, they succeeded, at least partially. The final portion of the recording documented the attempt. Footsteps, voices, running, announcements echoing through BLACKMERE. Then, excitement, hope, the first genuine hope heard anywhere on the tapes. Michael repeatedly shouted directions. People moved rapidly through tunnels, toward a newly appearing platform, toward a train, toward freedom. Then everything went wrong. The recording captured an announcement. One final announcement, different from all previous announcements. The voice sounded familiar, painfully familiar. Michael stopped speaking immediately. Several survivors did the same. The announcement repeated. Not a destination, not a platform number, a name. Michael Hargreaves. His name. The collector had chosen him. The tape descended into chaos. People shouted. Someone screamed. Michael's brother yelled something inaudible. Then Michael spoke one final time. Calmly, almost peacefully. Keep moving. More shouting. Don't stop. Static surged. Don't come back for me. The next sounds were difficult to interpret. A horn, a vibration, a roar. Then silence. absolute silence, the recording ended. That should have been the end of the story. It wasn't, because in 2024, shortly after the tape was discovered, something happened. Something authorities never publicly acknowledged. The maintenance tunnel where the cassette was found contained security cameras. One camera remained operational. At 11:17 p.m. on October 14th, exactly 27 years after the original disappearance, the camera recorded 17 minutes of footage. The video itself was lost. But one technician viewed it before it vanished. His written statement survives. According to him, a railway platform appeared inside the tunnel. Only briefly, 17 minutes, nothing more. No passengers entered, no passengers exited. The platform simply stood there, silent, empty, waiting. Then, just before it disappeared, a man stepped out of the darkness. The figure appeared thin, exhausted, older than expected. The technician only saw him for a few seconds, but long enough to recognize one detail. The man's employee identification photograph had appeared throughout the investigation for decades. The face belonged to Michael Hargreaves, missing since 1997. The man looked directly into the camera, raised a hand, and placed something on the platform, a small object, a cassette tape. Then he stepped backward into the darkness. The platform vanished. The tape remained. It was the tape investigators later recovered. The tape you have just heard. No further appearances have been officially documented. No explanation has ever been offered. No authority acknowledges Platform 9 exists. Officially, the case remains unsolved. But every year, on October 14th, emergency operators still receive strange calls. Most last only a few seconds. Most contain nothing but static. Yet, occasionally, a voice can be heard. Weak, distant, as though transmitted from somewhere impossibly far away. The voice always asks the same question, a question nobody has ever answered. Has the next train arrived yet? Epilogue. If you ever find yourself standing in a crowded station late at night, and you notice a platform that wasn't there before, do not approach it. Do not listen to the announcements. Do not look for the train. And if a voice over the speakers calls your name, leave immediately, because somewhere beyond the last platform, something is still collecting passengers. And according to the most recent reports, Platform 9 is due to appear again. The end.